They arrived in Derry on a morning that felt unfinished. The fog had not lifted, but it had not settled either. It hovered at knee-height, thin and indecisive, as if the town itself could not decide whether to hide or reveal what it was. Carlisle noticed it immediately. Fog, to him, had always been honest. This fog was evasive. The house on Nibald Street had been vacant for a long time. Long enough for dust to forget when it had first settled. Long enough for the walls to learn how to listen. Alice had chosen it after several failed attempts to see their future anywhere else nearby. Derry resisted her visions. This house resisted them less. That alone should have been warning enough. Carlisle began work at Derry General Hospital the following Monday. The staff welcomed him with relief that bordered on desperation. Doctors did not stay long in Derry. They burned out, moved away, vanished into quieter lives. No one said that last part out loud, but Carlisle heard it in the pauses between words. The hospital was old in the way only public buildings could be. Layers of renovation stacked over rot. The floors were clean. Too clean. The kind of clean that tries to convince you nothing bad ever happens here. By the end of his first week, Carlisle had treated 7 patients whose injuries made no sense. A child with fractures consistent with a fall from 3 stories, found in a 1-story house. A woman who drowned in a bathtub that had been empty when her husband entered the room. A man whose heart simply stopped while he screamed. What did he scream about? Carlisle asked a nurse quietly. She hesitated. Nothing, she said too quickly. Just nothing. Edward waited in the car that afternoon and listened to the thoughts passing through the parking lot. They bent away from the hospital, curved around it like water avoiding a drain. People did not think about Derry General unless they had to. When they did, their minds slid sideways, redirecting themselves to grocery lists and weather complaints. But underneath that, far underneath, was something repetitive. Laughter. Not a memory. A sensation. Edward shut his eyes and focused. The sound was not loud. It did not need to be. It sat at the bottom of thought, like a penny dropped into a well decades ago, still falling. That night, Alice tried again to see the future. She sat perfectly still on the living room couch, eyes unfocused, hands clenched in her lap. Jasper hovered nearby, his expression tight with concern. Bella watched from the doorway, feeling like an intruder in a private ritual. Alice gasped. That's all? Edward asked immediately. There's a blank, she said. Not death, worse, just nothing. Like someone tore the pages out. Someone? Bella asked. Alice did not answer. Jasper spoke instead. The fear here is not natural. He did not elaborate, but he did not need to. Everyone felt it now. Derry was not afraid in the way prey is afraid. It was afraid the way a house is afraid of fire, familiar with it, shaped by it, resigned. The first scream they heard came from underground. Rosalie and Emmett were the ones closest. They did not hesitate. They followed the sound to a stretch of land locals avoided, though none of them could say why. The storm drains there were old, wide enough for a grown man to stand in if he did not mind the smell. The screen cut off abruptly. They found a balloon first, red, bright enough to look obscene against the gray concrete. Then the clown stepped forward. He was smaller than Emmett expected, compact, cheerful in a way that made the skin crawl. His face was painted white, but it was cracked, as if the paint had been applied over something that moved too much beneath it. Well, hello, the clown said. You're early. Rosalie moved like lightning. Her kick connected, and passed halfway through his torso before resistance kicked in, snapping her leg sideways with a force that sent her skidding across concrete. Emmett roared and charged. This time, the impact landed. The clown flew back, hit the wall, slid down, and began laughing. Not screaming. Laughing. The sound pressed into Emmett's skull, made his teeth ache. The clown stood, bones cracking as he stretched, growing taller, thinner, rawer. Oh, he said, eyes glowing now, you're strong. I do love that. The ground buckled. Water surged upward, forming hands, faces, mouths that screamed silently. Emmett struck again and again, each blow meeting flesh that refused to behave like flesh. Rosalie tore into him, nails raking, and came away with blood that smoked when it hit the ground. The clown did not bleed. He enjoyed. "You do not taste right," he said thoughtfully. "But you'll do." Edward arrived first, then Jasper, then Carlisle and Bella, too late to stop the fight but in time to feel it. Edward lunged, his speed unmatched, until it was matched. The clown dodged before Edward moved, anticipating him with mocking ease. Edward heard nothing in the creature's mind. Nothing at all. Carlisle shouted for retreat. They did not argue. They ran because the alternative was staying long enough to learn what the clown could really do. Back at the house, Carlisle listened as they described the encounter. His face remained calm, but something ancient tightened behind his eyes. "This thing," he said finally, "is not a predator as we understand it." "What is it, then?" Bella asked. Carlisle folded his hands. "A sickness, one that learned how to smile." They began researching the town. Old newspapers spoke in euphemisms: accidents, tragedies, disappearances. Every 27 years, the pattern spiked, then faded.
Children were mentioned more often than adults. Clowns appeared in photographs no one could remember taking. Pennywise. The name surfaced again and again. Dismissed as folklore, explained away as mass hysteria. Edward read minds while they walked through town. Adults thought of Pennywise and felt nothing. Children thought of him and felt everything. Alice finally saw something. Not a future. A memory. A creature older than the town. Older than language. Sleeping beneath it. Feeding when it woke. Dreaming when it slept. "This place is not cursed," she whispered. "It's farmed." The second scream did not echo. It vanished. That was what frightened Carlisle most when Edward described it later. Sound, by its nature, wanted to travel. It bounced, refracted, insisted on being heard. This one had been swallowed, as if Derry itself had leaned in and closed its mouth around it. They followed anyway. The storm drain on Kansas Street gaped open like a wound that had never healed correctly. The metal bars were bent outward, not by force but by repetition, as if something had pushed through them often enough that resistance had simply given up. Inside, the air was warm. Bella noticed that first. Underground should have been cold, damp, neutral. This was warm in the way a body was warm. Breathing warmth. Jasper stiffened immediately. Fear flooded the tunnel. Thick and layered. Old fear stacked on top of new fear like sediment.
He tasted it and nearly staggered. "Careful," he muttered. "It wants us aware." Edward went first. He always did when things were unknown. His senses stretched outward, mapping every curve of concrete, every drip of water, every scurrying rat mindlessly fleeing something it could not name. Then the voices began. Not screams. Whispers. Children's voices, overlapping, calling names that did not belong to anyone present. Edward heard his own voice among them, younger, human, terrified. Bella flinched when she heard her mother's voice sobbing somewhere deep in the dark. The tunnel widened. Pennywise stood in the center, as if waiting for applause. This time he wore no clown suit, this time he wore faces. They shifted across his surface like reflections in warped glass. Children, adults, mouths frozen mid-scream, eyes wide and accusing. His limbs were too many, bending where joints should not bend, his smile stretching and collapsing like a wound that could not decide how to heal. "Oh," he crooned, "you came back." Carlisle stepped forward despite himself. "You are not a god." The thing laughed, and the sound caused the tunnel walls to ripple. "I never said I was," Pennywise replied. "That's what you called me." He struck without warning. Not with claws or teeth, but with pressure. Jasper was lifted off his feet and slammed into the ceiling hard enough to crack concrete.
Rosalie lunged and was caught midair, frozen, her body vibrating as if reality itself were resisting her existence. Telekinesis. Edward moved faster than thought and still was not fast enough. He was thrown backward, spine first, into a wall that cratered on impact. Bella screamed, and Pennywise's head snapped toward her, delighted. "Yes," he whispered. "There you are." Emmett roared and charged again, refusing to learn. This time, Pennywise met him head-on. Their collision sent a shockwave through the tunnel. Emmett drove the creature back step by step, muscles straining, teeth bared, For a moment, just a moment, it looked possible. Then Pennywise leaned close and mimicked Emmett's voice perfectly. "You're not strong enough." The words were not magic. They did not need to be. Emmett hesitated. That fraction of doubt was enough. Pennywise's hand slammed into Emmett's chest and sent him skidding across the floor, smoke rising from the impact point. Rosalie broke free with a scream that was more rage than pain. She tore into Pennywise, ripping, shredding, refusing to stop. Pieces of him came away in her hands, arms, flesh, faces, but they did not stay gone. They crawled back, reattached, laughed as they healed. Edward was on his feet again, moving around the creature, searching for anything resembling a mind. There was nothing. Pennywise did not think. He anticipated. He reacted to intention, not action.
Bella felt it then. The pressure behind her eyes. The sensation of being watched from the inside. Pennywise turned to her slowly. "You do not belong with them," he said gently. "You're afraid the right way." Images flooded her mind. Her own death, old age, weakness, a hospital bed, being forgotten, being ordinary. She dropped to her knees, gasping. And then Carlisle spoke. Not loudly, not angrily. "You feed on belief," he said, "on the idea that you are inevitable." Pennywise paused. Just a breath, just a blink. Carlisle stepped closer. "You are not infinite. You are a process, a cycle, a parasite that learned how to mythologize itself." The laughter faltered. Alice saw it then, not a future, but a possibility. A thin crack. Edward understood instantly. He stopped attacking, stopped hunting. He looked at Pennywise not as prey, not as threat, but as something small pretending to be vast. Jasper followed, forcing his emotions outward. Not fear, not courage, but acceptance. The calm knowledge that this fight might end them. Pennywise recoiled. "No," he hissed. "That's not how this works." Rosalie stepped back. Emmett pushed himself upright, bruised and smoking, but alive. Bella stood, shaking but resolute. They did not believe in him anymore. The tunnel began to collapse. Concrete split. Water surged. Pennywise screamed now, not in pain, but in rage. He struck wildly, less precise, less amused. Edward landed a blow that mattered. Rosalie tore away something vital. Jasper drove emotion into the creature like a spike. And then Pennywise fled. He dissolved into the walls, into the water, into the cracks between moments. His laughter thinning, retreating, promising. The tunnel caved in completely. They escaped barely ahead of it. Derry slept that night. Children dreamed peacefully. Adults felt lighter without knowing why. The town exhaled, content, unaware that it had only been granted a pause. The Cullens felt it the next morning. The hunger was gone. Edward woke to silence. True silence. No minds, no noise. Just birds and wind and the faint hum of electricity. Rosalie stared into the mirror and saw color in her cheeks. Carlisle's hands shook when he lifted his coffee cup. Alice tried to see the future and saw herself aging. Pennywise had kept his promise. He had lost the fight and won the war. They left Derry before the first snow fell. Behind them, deep beneath the streets, something ancient curled in on itself and slept again, satisfied, because nothing frightened the eternal more than learning how quickly eternity could end. They did not stop driving until the forest thinned and the road lost its memory of Derry. Even then, the town followed them, not in visions, not in voices, in absence. Edward was the first to break. He sat rigid in the passenger seat, staring out at the blur of trees, listening for thoughts that never came. For over a century, minds had been a constant pressure against his senses, a tide he had learned to navigate without drowning. Now there was nothing. The silence was so complete it felt artificial, like soundproof glass wrapped around his skull. "I cannot hear them," he said finally. No one asked who. Carlisle nodded once. He had already confirmed it himself. The loss of hunger, of strength, of the cold precision that had defined their existence for so long, it was undeniable now. Their bodies still moved too fast, healed too cleanly, but the edges were blunted. Something fundamental had been taken, or returned. They stopped in a nameless town 2 days later. A place with a diner, a gas station,
and a sense of impermanence. Alice stepped out of the car and immediately staggered. "I can see again," she whispered. Not far, not clearly, but the future existed now, and that terrified her more than its absence ever had. Carlisle found a mirror in the diner restroom and stared into it for a long time. His reflection stared back with unfamiliar honesty, the faintest hint of warmth beneath the skin. A pulse, slow but present. A heartbeat. Pennywise had not merely weakened them. He had rewritten them. The realization settled differently in each of them. Rosalie was furious. Rage simmered beneath every movement, every word. Immortality had been stolen from her once before, and now it had been reshaped into something worse. Choice, vulnerability, time that moved forward instead of looping endlessly. They moved through the abandoned hospital wing with every sense alert. The shadows clung to the walls like wet cloth, and the air smelled of rust, mildew, and something older, something deliberate. Bella stayed at the edge of the group, her heartbeat loud and alive. The others had grown weaker, slower, bound by mortality that Pennywise had forced upon them, but she was human. Every fear, every ache, every moment of courage pulsed through her in sharp, undeniable clarity. The creature waited at the end of the corridor. Not a clown now, not a trickster. It was taller, its limbs too long, its skin impossibly pale and smooth, like wax, and where its face should have been, only the suggestion of one lingered. Its awareness pressed against them, probing, calculating. Edward stepped forward. Carlisle caught his arm. "Let her feel it first," he said. "Let her be the measure." Bella inhaled, forced herself to stand tall, and met it. Her fear burned through her chest, but she did not step back. "I'm not afraid of you," she said. Her voice echoed unnaturally, a defiance that cut through the darkness. The creature hesitated. For the first time in decades, it did not know how to respond. Then it struck. It was chaos. Edward was thrown into a wall, Rosalie slammed sideways into pipes, Emmett crushed against the floor, and Jasper staggered, caught in the weight of raw, old fear. Bella dove forward, taking the brunt of the attack, her body bruised and bleeding, but her courage anchoring the others. For a moment, the Cullens moved as one. Blows landed, claws tore, fists struck. Edward hit the creature squarely, Rosalie ripped at its limbs, Jasper forced emotion into it, raw and sharp. But nothing stayed destroyed. It reshaped, reformed, laughed, soundless, mocking. Bella gritted her teeth. Her humanity, fragile and fleeting, was the only thing that could hold the creature's attention. She did not falter. She did not scream. Every heartbeat, every pulse, every flicker of mortal fear anchored the others. It was the first time they had understood that the human heart could hold weight immortality could not. The creature recoiled, not defeated, but measured. It did not vanish completely. It shrank, receded into the shadows, but it watched. Always watching, always waiting. Carlisle exhaled, voice low. "It's held back. For now." Edward shook his head, chest heaving. "Not defeated," he said. "It's still alive, still patient. It's just biding its time." Rosalie wiped blood from her face. "It's still there. It can come back any time." Jasper ran a hand through his hair, exhausted. "We've slowed it, maybe, but it's never gone." Bella's chest rose and fell, hands trembling, blood soaking her sleeves. "We survived," she whispered. "But it's not over. It will be back." Outside, Derry was quiet. Too quiet. The wind whispered through the cracks of abandoned streets and storm drains. Beneath the city, Pennywise stirred in the darkness, patient and eternal, waiting for the next cycle. The Cullens left the city together, not as invincible beings, but as humans once more. Mortality weighed on them, strength diminished, hearts fragile, but alive. They would live to fight another day. And in that truth lay both relief and terror. Because somewhere, in the tunnels beneath Derry, something ancient and cunning had learned again. Fear never truly dies. It only waits. And it always remembers. Bella looked at her family as they drove away. She was human, vulnerable, alive. The anchor. And somehow, that was both their salvation and their curse. They had not won. They had survived. And in the shadowed streets of Derry, Pennywise waited, smiling without a mouth, dreaming of the next time.